Well, happy Thursday afternoon. This is Meteorologist Aaron Colby. Today, Thursday, September 19th, and we're taking a look at what's going on out in the tropics. Now, of course, lots of, especially on social media and across some websites like the National Hurricane Center, where you have seen that there has been an area that we are keeping an eye on in the Caribbean, and especially out on social media, you might have seen some model runs or may have seen some areas of interest, but let's take a look at exactly what's going on out there. Of course, we are continuing to keep a close eye on just a couple different things out there. Let's start going out on the far right hand of the screen there. You can see that there's two areas in yellow. That's a low chance of development over the next 5 to 7 days. The one furthest to the right, that's going to be what's left of Tropical Storm Gordon. That's continuing to move up to the north. Actually, you can see it there on satellite, those red and black colors. It's slowly drifting out towards the northeast. And that's going to be what's left of Tropical Storm Gordon. Currently not producing any tropical storm force winds at the moment. As it continues to drift to the north, there is a low chance it will redevelop. If it does, it will keep the name Gordon. And just over to its west, another small area could become a tropical depression over the next couple days. But once again, that's a low chance of development over the next 5 to 7 days. Now looking over in the Western Caribbean, we are keeping an eye on this area. This is a medium chance of development over the next about 5 to 7 days. And this is the area you may have seen on social media. Lots of people talking about, hey, this could potentially be something for the Gulf. Well, let's talk about it. Once again, medium chance of development as we go over the next 5 to 7 days. This is because, of course, during this time of year, we do typically see a little bit of activity begin to stir up, especially near Central America. This is known as the Central American Gyre, and it typically produces a lot of tropical moisture, and we can sometimes get some small systems spin up from this. Now, let's take a look at the steering pattern going into next week, because once again, it's a medium chance of development over the next 5 to 7 days, which does mean that this would be much further down the road. Here's what the steering pattern does look like when you get to next Tuesday. And things look pretty, you can see here, we do have a high pressure over the Gulf of Mexico, and of course, especially much of the northern Gulf of Mexico, mainly seeing that pattern with those strong winds moving mainly from east to west across the Gulf of Mexico. So a steering pattern would typically try and bring something a little bit further to the west under these conditions. And you can see down there in the center of the screen that Central American Gyre we're talking about, that area, broad area of low pressure associated with a lot of tropical moisture just to the south and the east of the Yucatan Peninsula. That's that area that we are watching for potential development going into next week. Now, let's take a look at some of the different models on this, and you can see the GFS here does hint at something potentially developing. You see a drop in pressure there. The rain rates there in the greens, reds, and oranges are beginning to increase. That's usually a sign that we are getting some sort of development in that area. Lots of other models also beginning to agree that something is likely to develop in that region near the Yucatan Peninsula, move up towards the northwest into the Gulf, and beyond that, it is very difficult to tell. Of course, this is going well beyond that 5 to 7 day range. You can see here, this frame is from next Friday, so still well over a week away. We'll be keeping an eye on that, of course, and tropical activity normally peaks at the beginning or middle parts of September. We are now moving into that second half of hurricane season, where we will continue to see a decrease in activity over the next about month or two. And of course, we do still have the ability to see some storms, especially there in the Caribbean, near the Central American Gyre, there the Yucatan Peninsula. That's normally where we do see some activity if we get any over the end of September. Here's where we're at right now. We have seen most of our storms for the season going about 3 tropical storms so far: Alberto, Chris, and Gordon. And of course, we have seen one major hurricane, Category 5 Hurricane Beryl, from earlier in the season. We've also seen a couple landfalling hurricanes, not majors, but landfalling hurricanes here in the Gulf of Mexico, that being Debbie and Francine, both making landfall within the Gulf of Mexico. Ernesto was out in the middle of the Atlantic. Next names on the list would be Helene and Isaac. if we continue to see some tropical activity as the season continues to progress, as once again we are on that down slope towards the end of the season. So that's what we are tracking at the moment. No major concerns for the Gulf Coast at this time. We do have that one area. Let's go back to that, and you can see we do expect at least some sort of activity to begin to develop over about the next 5 to 7 days, especially in that northwestern Caribbean, very close to the Yucatan Peninsula. Here's that highlighted area once again of medium chance of development over about the next 5 to 7 days. Still a lot that can happen. You can see on the satellite, it's not even really there yet. You can see just south of this area, we are beginning to see a little bit of those disorganized showers and storms, some very weak activity down to the south of this area. And once again, that is associated with the Central American Gyre. That's that area that does typically produce some activity around this time of year. That is expected to slowly drift to the north and over the warm waters. You saw on the steering pattern, not much in the way of stopping anything, so we do expect this to move into that region somewhere in between Cuba and the Yucatan Peninsula, potentially becoming something within about the next 5 to 7 days, possibly even beyond that. So we'll just be keeping a close eye on it. There is not a lot that we know about this at the moment. Of course, we still have to wait until it does emerge out into wherever this will end up coming out of. It's still over land at the moment, as you can see there in the bottom of the screen. But of course, as that does slowly drift to the north, we will continue to learn more. If it does begin to form and actually gets a center where we can see some more of that activity, then of course we'll understand and be able to know a lot more from that point. But as of right now, all we know is that there is a medium chance of development right there near the Yucatan Peninsula, potentially moving kind of towards the north into the Gulf of Mexico. Beyond that, very, very difficult to tell. Still, remember, way outside of that 5 to 7 day range. We'll be keeping an eye on it, and of course, for the latest, just stay tuned for more updates. We should begin to know more about this by the time we get closer to this weekend, maybe into early next week.